Let the fun begin. Week 1 college football.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Isn't that why you're here?
Dixie Parlay Fair, live from playing with the house money, where we have done so much with so little for so long that it seems we can do anything with nothing at all in no time flat. Now let's get to the money. Here is your not-so-early analysis of all Week 1 college football games. Let the fun begin. Coming from the west, making this cross-country trek as usual, we have Boise State minus 9.5 at South Florida with a total of 63.5. Let's look at Boise State first. Last year, 12-2. This year, they bring back 14 starters, 7 on offense, 7 on defense, along with a really good quarterback in Maddox Madsen, who last year threw for 3,018 yards and 23 touchdowns with just 6 INTs. Of course, they'll be trying to replace all-world running back Ashton Jeanty. They say that true freshman Sire Gaines has a lot of Jeanty attributes, but he was out last year after 3 games. He also had Malik Sherrod, who had 996 yards in 23 at Fresno State. I don't think that in no way, shape, or form they could come close to Jeanty's numbers from last year. It ain't going to happen, Captain. They improved at receiver and on the O-line. Boise State led the nation last year in sacks with 55. They still have a good core team. Facing this South Florida team whose overseer is Alex Golesh. You remember Alex Golesh? He was the offensive coordinator at Tennessee, and when he was there, they had some really explosive offenses. He hasn't really been doing too much over at South Florida. His teams are 1-8 against teams with a winning record, this being his 3rd year when coaches get deep in their bag. His offenses are only averaging 30 points a game, but his defense is actually giving up just as much as his offense, right at 30 points a game. Golesh has his quarterback back, 6'3", 229-pound junior, Byron Brown. He started at quarterback last year, but he got hurt in the 5th game, so he was out after that. Even though South Florida was 7-6 last year, we have to really look at the wins from last year. Just right quick, Bethune-Cookman, Southern Miss UAB, Florida Atlantic, Charlotte, and Tulsa. No fucking cream of the crop. All those games went over the total. You remember the game last year in Alabama? They were getting 30. They flirted with a fake upset in the first half. I won't even say flirted with upset, but they played them good. Miami smoked them. Beat by Tulane, Memphis, and Navy. I just don't think the core caliber of the team can really hold up against Boise. Boise State with another cross-country ass whooping. Boise State 45, South Florida 24. We still on these Thursday night games. We got a Big Ten special with the Rutgers Scarlet Knights against the Ohio Bobcats. It opened at Rutgers minus 10.5 with a total of 47.5. It's now Rutgers minus 12.5 with a total of 45.5. I guess the money has been coming in on Rutgers. Rutgers last year was 7-6. They have 16 return starters on offense and 7 on defense. Quarterback Ethan Kelliak-Manis will be the floor general of this group. Alone for the ride will be running back Antoine Raymond and wide receiver Ian Strong, along with 6'6", 220-pound wide receiver KJ Duff. Duff averaged 15 YDs a catch last year, so the offense should be solid. The defense should be able to hold its own with transfers Eric O'Neal, 29 sacks the last 3 years at JMU, and Bradley Weaver, 14.5 sacks the last 2 years at Ohio. That should give them a really good presence up front. Rutgers started out pretty good last year, actually, with 4 straight wins. They dusted off a couple of scrubs and a couple of mediocre teams, but when they got into solid Big Ten play, they lost 4 in a row. 11-3 last year was a good record for the Ohio Bobcats. It was the last year for Coach Frank Solich from when he came over from Nebraska and had here all that time. I know we thought he wasn't going to coach again, and he goes for another 16 years, but he left Ohio last year. If I'm not mistaken, I think he left before the bowl game, but he had put together a relatively good squad last year. This year they have 10 returning starters, 7 on offense and 3 on defense. Last year they actually had a pretty good defense. They only gave up 18 points a game. They have a new coach in Brian Smith, who was last year's offensive coordinator. So him and his quarterback already imagine made in heaven. That will be Parker Navarro. Navarro is the only Ohio quarterback to ever pass for 2,000 yards and rush for over 1,000 in the same season. They do lose their 1,000-yard rusher from last year and 5 of their top 6 receivers, but they do get back running back C. Bangura from Minnesota. He's a 2-time 1,000-yard rusher, along with Rutgers offensive tackle Shedrick Rhodes with 24 starts. They were most likely take a step back on defense because they lost all of their front 7. Even though the new coach was the offensive coordinator, I still don't see the Bobcats pulling off the upset in the first road game for the new coach. You know, usually we fade a new coach in his first road game, and I think I'll be doing the same thing here. Rutgers 38, Ohio 22. Now, you know, here at Playing with the House Money, we love ourselves a good old bum bowl, and it's a few on this week 1 slate. One that I'm referring to is Wyoming 7.5 against Akron with a total of 51.5. Wyoming will be on a cross-country road trip going from West Coast time to East Coast time. How in the hell Wyoming can be favored in a road game is fucking beyond me. Wyoming was favored in only game last year, and that was against Idaho. They were 8 and they lost by 4. On the other hand, as we all would expect, oh my God, Akron was favored in the game last year. My bad dope. Akron was favored against Colgate and actually covered 13 and won 31-20. Oh shit, I guess I can't count. Actually, they won 31-20, but they didn't cover. I read that wrong. I ain't perfect. I make mistakes. I'll be the second to admit it. Wyoming was 3-9 last year. They did win 2 road games. They won at New Mexico, and they won at Washington State, and in both games, they were dogs. The offense and defensive stats are totally reversed. The defense gave up 28 points a game, and the offense averaged 19.3. The outlook still looks bleak to me, even with QB Caden Anderson back. He only started 3 games. He started at Utah State and got hurt in the Boise game. Akron actually fared better than Wyoming with the 4-8 record last year. They only have 7 starters back, 5 on offense and 2 on defense. It seems to me these bums are a mirror image of each other, with Akron defense giving up 32 points a game and the offense only scored 20 points a game. This is ridiculous, but that's why we're here, for the handicap to handle ridiculous shit. No way in hell could trust Wyoming on the road, even against Akron. Ben Finley will be the leader of this other bum squad, back from a 2,600-yard passing season, plus 16 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. They really don't have a lot to work with. Maybe the O-line has taken a step up. The defense loses all 4 of its starting D linemen. Based on my bum bowl analysis, I must take Akron with the points. That, my boy, will lead me to a bag. And I will sprinkle something on the money line. Wyoming 24, Akron 21. Moving right along, we have Jacksonville State at UCF. UCF minus 16.5 with a total of 53.5. In this game, we have 2 new coaches, Charles Kelly and one we know, Scott Frost. Frost was at UCF back in the day. I think at one point he went 13-0, then went to Nebraska, fell on his face. I think he had a losing record in Nebraska. Yeah, like 16-31. Last year, UCF was 4-8. They have 10 returning starters, 4 on offense, 6 on defense. The signal callers are as follows: Cam Francher, 9 starts at FAU and 17 starts at Marshall. They got Tavon Jackson, preseason number 2. He started in a win for Indiana last year. At running back is first-team MAC running back Jaden Nixon from Western Michigan. Last year he had a 6.4-yard average with 921 yards rushing. That's pretty good. They add Maryland tight end Dylan Wade and 5 other transfers. It seems to me they still lack experience because they don't really have any bona fide starters. What can I say about the defense? If you got a brand new coach, even though you got 6 starters back, it's basically a brand new defense. We don't know what to expect out of Scott Frost because the last time we saw him, he was straight garbo, Jay. Can he get himself together again at UCF? Jack State, on the other hand, had a 9-5 record last year under coach Rich Rodriguez. This is only the 3rd year in FBS for Jack State. Like I said before, they have a first-year coach and they only have 6 stars back. But that's kind of rough. I don't know what their budget is like in this pay-to-play era. What I can see is most of their coaches have been around some pretty good company, national championships and all. Battling for the starting quarterback at Jack State is going to be Gavin Winstead. I don't know how the hell he's ranked preseason number 7. He started 19 games of Rutgers. He threw 2,800 yards, but an abysmal 17 touchdowns with 21 interceptions. Get the fuck out of here. He isn't impressive for real. Add in Marshall, Memphis transfer, Kay Cunningham to round it out. I don't know if they can do too much with that. They do have TCU's #1 running back, but he didn't do too much last year. You know what? It's just no way I could trust the talent level of people who would want to come play for an unproven coach. This ain't Rich Rod. UCF has way more money, and I think they're going to put their ass on the treadmill. UCF Fort 5. Jack State 14. Next on this betting plate will be North Carolina State -11.5 against East Carolina with a total of 59.5. This is going to be a very interesting game. As you know, East Carolina defeated this in-state rival North Carolina State in the Military Bowl last year, 26-21. Other than that, North Carolina State has won the last 3 of the last 4 regular season meetings. Home team has covered 4 straight and 6 out of the last 7. Dave Doran has 15 starters back, 8 on offense, 7 on defense. He gets his quarterback back, C.J. Bailey, a sophomore who was responsible for 22 touchdowns last year. Best chance to be sharing in the backfield with him will more than likely be true freshman DeAndre Dior. They have a good trio of 6'2" and 6'3" receivers in Jonathan Paylor, Wesley Grimes, and Nora Rogers. I don't know what they really expect from the defense, because the previous 4 years they only gave up 20 points a game, and last year they gave abysmal 30 points game. They lose their defensive coordinator to a head coaching job. Will this game weigh on the revenge factor? The Wolfpack started out slow last year. I actually took those 32 points with Western Carolina. Oh shit, looking at last season's wins for North Carolina State. Wins were against Western Carolina, La Tech, Northern Illinois, California, Stanford, and North Carolina. Come on, man, they're bottom feeders. East Carolina fare pretty good, going 8-5 in Coach Blake Harrell's first year. They only returned $6 along with a quarterback, falling off fence, 2 on defense this year. To be Hauser is one of 5 stars back. They lose their top running back from last year, but do add Houston running back Parker Jenkins. As for the pass catchers, they do lose their top 5 receivers and bring in a few transfers, including Jaquaze Petaway, tried preseason #9 out of Oklahoma. The lack of starters back for East Carolina is problematic, but I just don't think, as in-state rivalry, North Carolina State can be giving away double digits. With that being said, East Carolina has covered 4 straight road openers. The way I see it, North Carolina State 35, East Carolina 30. This next one is a rematch of last year's season opener between the Duke Blue Devils and FCS foe Elon. Duke won the game handily last year, 26-3. They were favored by 23, so it was a push, and it stayed well under the total. This year, we have Duke favored by 33.5 with a total of 47.5. Out of the gate, I like the over. Duke starts this season after an impressive 9-4 campaign under first-year head coach Manny Diaz. You all know Diaz is head coach of Miami, defensive coordinator in Miami, Penn State, and Texas. He goes into the season with 13 starters returning, 6 on offense and 7 on defense. He acquired, through the portal, a very dynamic quarterback in Darian Mensah. Mensah headed a Tulane offense that averaged 35 points a game, where he passed for 2,700 yards, 22 touchdowns, with only 6 interceptions. Unfortunately, they lost their top running back, but do have 3 running backs who can fit the bill. The leading returning wide receiver is not that big of a guy, but he's pretty fast. Sean Brown, who averaged right around 11 yards a catch last year. The defense, which is Diaz's specialty, has some key starters back and also some key transfers, so this year they're more experienced. Elon will counter with 7 returning starters, 4 on the offensive line, 2 wide receivers, and 7th-year quarterback Matthew Downing. The quarterback decision hasn't been made yet, with Elon bringing in Iowa transfer Marco Lainez, who did much of nothing in time at Iowa. They will be looking to lean on running back T.J. Thomas early in the season, as he had a successful freshman campaign with 575 yards and 6 touchdowns. The defense line will be led by Amari Brown, and the secondary will be held up by redshirt sophomore Alsobrook, who finished the season with 5 pass breakups and 28 solo tackles. Looking at this game from a sensible perspective, I think I like the over 47.5 more than I like anything. I think Mensah should be able to run roughshod over this defense with his legs and his arms, and I would think that Manny Diaz, in his second season, in his first game against an inferior opponent, would like to flex his muscle. Duke 47, Elon 10. Don't look now, but it's the Bulls of Buffalo against the Golden Gophers of Minnesota. It's Minnesota minus 16.5 with a total of 45. PJ Flick will have a total of 13 starters with this goal for Team 7 on offense, 6 on defense, with the returning quarterback that I don't really know if you could consider a returning quarterback based on the fact that Drake Lindsay, a redshirt freshman, topping out a whopping 6'5", 230 pounds. I don't know too many defensive backs that would want to tackle him. He has only completed 4 out of 5 pass attempts for measly 50 yards and 1 touchdown.
They are pretty strong and deep on the O-line, and they are very talented at running back. With Darius Taylor, who last year ran for 986 yards after missing after the opening game, he'll be pushed by Marshall transfer A.J. Turner, who rushed for 864 yards with an 8.3-yard average in 24 on the receiving side of the ball. They had first-team Marshall transfer Javon Tracy, who last year had 818 receiving yards and almost 15 yards of reception. They counter that with 5 solid tight ends. The problem here with me is the lack of experience with the Minnesota starting quarterback. P.J. Fleck has been pretty good with quarterbacks. On the defensive side of the ball, the Gophers were really good last year, only giving up 16.7 points a game. The new defensive coordinator is Danny Collins, has what he calls a havoc defense, which is how Attack Violence 1 compete. I don't know what the fuck that means, but if they were as good as they were last year, he can say whatever he wants. Turning now to the Buffalo side of the ball. In his second year, Pete Lembo is going to try to counter that with 16 returning starters. He did a miracle last year in his first year with only 10 starters back and without a returning starting quarterback. If he can even come close to that last year's performance, that would be great. But with 16 starters back, I think he might have a shot at winning in the MAC. The magician under center will be senior Tyquan Robertson family, 3 years at Penn State and last year at Kansas. Robertson, who hasn't started a game since 2023 when he threw for 2,000 yards with 12 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. The running backs are in good shape with the return of 1,000-yard rusher Al J. Henderson, and with 9 starters returning on defense, lead by nose tackle George Wolo, 6-foot, 300-pound nose tackle clogging up the middle.
Buffalo is 0-5 straight up and 2-3 ATS against Power 4 teams. With an unproven starting quarterback in the first game of the season, I find myself taking the points in this one. Buffalo averaged 47 points a game in the last 4 to close out the season with the win over Liberty in the Bahamas Bowl. I really don't know if they can win this, but I have to believe that they can keep it close. I'm thinking more along the lines of Minnesota 30, Buffalo 21. We're going to stay in the Midwest with the clash between 2 teams who haven't met since 1906. 2 teams ultimately heading in different directions. Nebraska minus 16.5 against Cincinnati with a total of 52.5. Matt Rule is in his 3rd year at Nebraska, the year in which a coach should make his mark on the team. Nebraska had a 6-5 record last year and were in the games they lost except one where they got blowed out by Indiana. They played Ohio State close. They played Illinois close. They played Iowa close. This year, with 15 starters back, 10 offensive, 5 on defense, the Cornhuskers look to try to make a move in the Big Ten. Back after high praise and a lackluster season is quarterback Dylan Raiola, who last year had a mediocre outing with 2,800 yards, 13 touchdowns, with a horrible 11 interceptions. The good thing about that is prior head coach, now offensive coordinator, Dana Holgorsen took over the offense. Holgorsen is an offensive guru and should get better results out of Raiola. Hugging the pill consistently from the running back position will be Emmett Johnson Jr., 1,000-yard rusher from last year. 3 solid receivers who finalized the gang will be Jacoby Barney, who led the team with 55 receptions last year, Dane Key, who was Kentucky's #1 receiver last year with 715 yards, and Cal transfer Neziah Hunter, who averaged 14.5 yards a catch. The defense is a question mark. With only 5 stars returning, they lose their stud defensive tackles along with 5 other starters, but Matt Rule should field a solid defense. If Riola and the offense can average more than 23 points a game, I think Nebraska has a good shot at topping last year's win total. In Matt Rule's third year at Baylor, he went 11-3, and his third year at Temple, he went 10-4. Scott Satterfield, former App State and Louisville coach, is also in his third year here at Cincinnati. 7 starters on offense, including the quarterback, and 8 on defense, the remnants of a 5-7 team from a year ago. In the cockpit would be quarterback Brendan Sorsby, who last year had a pretty good season, throwing for 2,800 yards, 18 touchdowns to 7 INTs. He also added 447 rush yards. They do add Tawi Walker, who last year led Wisconsin with 864 rush yards. They had 3 very compelling starting wide receivers, but Jeff Caldwell stands out as the most prolific. The 6'5", 212-pound first-team Big South player had over 1,000 yards receiving last year, while averaging 20 yards a catch at Linwood. On defense, they get 8 starters back, and the man in the middle is none other than nose tackle Dante Corleone, a 6'1", 300-pound block of cement who was out last year. This should be a real interesting game with Riola in the second year. Dan Hoganson will be trying to put his imprint on the offense and get more scoring out of them against a Cincinnati team who is just trying to level up. That being the case, I see it. Nebraska 34, Cincinnati 21. Look like we got a line here on the Big 12 FCS matchup between Oklahoma and the University of Tennessee Martin. This line looks like Oklahoma State, 22.5 with an over of 55.5. Last year, Oklahoma State fell off a cliff. They started out 3-0, but after that, they lost 9 straight games. It was arguably the worst season in Mike Gundy's 21 years here as a coach. I don't know if this is his last year, but I would assume that it probably is after 3-9 season last year, after returning 18 starters. This year, he returns $10 phone offense, 6 on defense. The defense was terrible last year, giving up an average of 36 points a game, even though they had preseason Heisman favorite. Allie Gordon only gained 880 yards for the season. The quarterback will more than likely be Zane Flores, who was at Mississippi in 24, but he was injured. Oklahoma State has opened the last 4 seasons against an inferior folk Missouri State, Central Michigan, Central Arkansas, and South Dakota State. Under Gandhi, Oklahoma State is 16-0, straight up 9-4 ATS versus the FCS. I'm thinking after a season that was an abortion gun, he should be able to right the ship. University of Tennessee Modern had a 95 rec last year, and they shared our won the last 4 conference championships in their conference. Tennessee Martin returns a strong core of players on the defense and the offensive line. They are led by preseason Defensive Player of the Year candidate, cornerback Jamichael McCoy Jr. On opposite side of the ball, they'll be led by Sam Houston State transfer Jace Bauer. I'm not going to make too much of this. I'm going to leave well enough alone. But I think in this case, history repeats itself. Oklahoma State 44, University of Tennessee, Martin 17. Once again, we have a line here on the FBS-FCS matchup that will pit the Houston Cougars of the Big 12 against Stephen F. Austin of the FCS. Houston minus 22.5 with an over-under of 55.5. Last year, the Houston Cougars got rid of their longtime coach and brought in Willie Fritz. You guys know Fritz. He led Georgia Southern to the SBC title in his first year in FBS, took Tulane to a 12-2 season and Cotton Bowl champs, the biggest season turn around the FBS history. This year, he will have most, if not all, of his own recruits and his own team that he put together. Fritz is in his second year here, and I don't think the cupboard is bare. He has 16 return starters, 9 on offense, 7 on defense. His lead henchman on offense will be quarterback Connor Wegman, a junior who transferred in from Texas A&M. He will share the backfield with Dean Connors, who was Rice's top offensive player last year. Usually Fritz has good, strong rushing attacks. They add in 4 receivers who were full-time starters last year. The top receivers only combined for Wright at 1,200 yards last year, so they should be much more productive. As for the defense, they do lose 7 starters, but they bring in a plethora of transfers and have a new scheme under defense coordinator Armstrong. Stephen F. Austin did average 36 points a game and bring back a really good core along with the quarterback Sam Vidlac, who threw almost 2,400 yards, mirrored by a really good 24-7 interception ratio. Along with him will be 2 of the top 3 running backs, the top 6 wide receivers, and 4 offensive linemen. One of his favorite targets will be All-American Keon Harris, 1,000-yard receiver from last year. The offensive line averages 300 pounds across the board, and the defense was ranked 9th in the FCS last year. Defenses lead by preseason All-American, well actually 2 preseason All-Americans in linebacker Aaron Austin and defensive tackle Edward Babino. Stephen F. Austin didn't lose a lot to the portal as most FCS teams, but they did bring in a lot. Based on my analysis of this criteria, I see Willie Fritz actually taking off on Stephen F. Austin game 1 of the season. Houston 42, Stephen F. Austin 17. I'll see you at the window. Next up, we have 2 teams we haven't seen much of each other lately. This is only the second meeting of the Wisconsin Badgers against the Redhawks of Miami, Ohio. Wisconsin minus 17.5 with an over-under of 39.5. Wow, that's a very funny line. Luke Fickell is the captain of this ship. Fickell, in his 3rd year here, was the AAC Coach of the Year 3 times. In 18, 20, and 21, when he was in Cincinnati, Fickell brings back 14 starters on his team, 6 on offense, 8 on defense. Lead by senior quarterback Billy Edwards from Maryland, who was used as a running quarterback in 2023, but actually passed for right at 2,900 yards, 15 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. By default, we must mention that both years they lost the starting quarterbacks. They bring in a new offensive coordinator, Jeff Grimes, who ran the RVO offense, the reliable, violent offense at Baylor. Wisconsin defenses have fared well in the past and have only given up an average over 20 points a game only twice in the last 7 years. Wisconsin did play some pretty good ball and were leading Penn State and Oregon at the half. They whittled away down the stretch, losing 5 straight games. Miami, Ohio will not fare well in the returning starters category, with only 1 on offense and 5 on defense. I assume that the lone starter who qualifies is actually a pretty good player, Daquan Finn, who led Toledo to 32 points a game in 2023.
So much for an offensive analysis. The defense does have a few returners to lean on. They returned 3 of their top 5 tacklers, despite losing former MAC Defensive Player of the Year Matt Salopek. Miami, Ohio only relinquished right at 19 points a game last year. And once again, they start on the road where they are 0-4 to open the season and 0-4 ATS. I would only bet this game if they put a gun in my head. With that being said, I see Miami, Ohio plus the points, and my best bet in this one will be the over. Wisconsin 28, Miami, Ohio 14. We have a long way to go, so I'm keeping my foot on the gas. Here's your bonus 3-pick lock. Rutgers over 49.5, East Carolina plus 14.5, and Sam Houston State plus 9.5.